Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Let's Talk series. My name is Desiree Hernandez, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker working at Mount Sachs Student Health Services with a team of licensed professionals. Today, we will be opening the discussion of anxiety. We are going to explore a few anxiety disorders, discuss some coping skills that you can use on your own, and also provide you with some resources to further explore and educate yourself about anxiety. Please know that moving forward, this is not a substitute for mental health services. It is important to speak to a professional to acquire an appropriate diagnosis. There are so many personal factors that this presentation cannot take into account. In this presentation, we will discuss some resources. We do not receive any compensation for the mention of these resources, nor do we endorse these resources. We're merely bringing them to your attention so that way you can explore further on your own. We have used many of these resources in our own practices with our clients and thought it would be a good way to introduce you to what we could be using in therapy. So let's get started. We first need to understand a little bit more about anxiety. Not all anxiety is bad. Anxiety serves the purpose. Anxiety enables us to accomplish tasks and meet deadlines, keeps us aware of our surroundings, and keeps us safe in dangerous situations. Anxiety is a fight or flight response. You may have heard this before. When we are faced with stressors, we naturally react either by fighting or running or fleeing, or sometimes even freezing. These reactions keep us safe from real harm. First, I want to do a very simple breakdown of what anxiety is and how it impacts our physical body. So this is how the fight or flight response works. We see or perceive a threat, and then our brains try to process the information and send out signals, which then produces the hormone, ACTH for short, which produces cortisol or adrenaline. And then we have physical effects. Our heart races, our bladder may relax. We might have that tunnel vision, shaking, dilated pupils, a flushed face, dry mouth, slowed digestion, hearing loss even. So these are just some of the physical effects that our body has. But it's important to recognize that anxiety is very physical. And we can use this information to help us learn how to cope. Now I want to talk about the other impacts of fight or flight. Anxiety may also cause you to have difficulty breathing or have tingling sensations. Mentally, you might become confused, you might have a hard time focusing, you might start thinking that the problem is unmanageable, and then you start to tell yourself really negative self-statements. Emotionally, you might start feeling really overwhelmed. You already are feeling worried or scared, fearful of the situation, which then might lead you to behave maybe some crying, yelling, or anger outbursts, avoidance. Maybe you just isolate and withdraw. Something to understand is that anxiety is a cycle. You have an event that triggers thoughts, which triggers feelings, which triggers physical body reactions, and then triggers behaviors, and then starts all over again with thoughts, feelings, body behaviors. So you can see that you can get very stuck in the anxiety cycle. But let's not forget that anxiety can serve a good purpose. We all experience anxiety. Sometimes we refer to anxiety as stress. If you've checked out any of our other presentations, maybe you've already learned that there's good stress and bad stress. So how do we know when our stress becomes too much or is developing into something bigger than stress and starts to turn into perhaps an anxiety disorder? I thought this image really summarized well the difference between stress and anxiety. So if you look here under stress, you could see stress generally is a response to an external, something on the outside cause, such as taking a big test or arguing with a friend. Usually it will go away, the stress will go away once the situation is resolved. And it can be positive or negative. For example, stress may inspire you to meet a deadline, or it may cause you to lose sleep. Now, if you look on the other side, anxiety generally is internal, meaning it's your reaction to stress. Usually, it involves a persistent feeling of apprehension or dread that doesn't go away. So you're constantly feeling nervous or worried. And that interferes with how you live your life. So you keep feeling anxious, even though the event has gone away. And as you can see here in the middle, both stress and anxiety can affect your mind and body. You may experience symptoms such as these below: excessive worry, uneasiness, tension, headaches or body pain, high blood pressure, loss of sleep. Both anxiety and stress can cause these feelings and reactions. Right here, we have a short list of ways to cope. Keep a journal, download an app with relaxation exercises, exercise and eat healthy, get regular sleep, avoid excess caffeine, identify and challenge your negative thoughts, and reach out to your friends or family. We're going to talk a little bit more about some ways to cope in a bit. Anxiety disorders form when your fight or flight responses goes into overdrive or becomes overreactive. Your brain and body have difficulty being able to determine what is the true threat. Some people can experience extreme anxiety responses for daily tasks, such as leaving the house, going to get the mail, answering a phone call, making food, and many more things. Once a person's fight or flight system is triggered, a person has difficulty with regulating their emotions. Let's take a look at a video of some people sharing their brief experiences with what it was like to be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder.
It felt good actually to be diagnosed and to know what I was experiencing and know that there was help and know that there was probably 60 out of 100% that felt the same as me. And I didn't feel so alone anymore. Like I didn't feel so weird or whatever you want to call it.
I went and saw my GP, Fred, and told him what I was feeling, and he had a chat to me about some of the, I guess he sort of said that the anxiety was probably coming on as part of my depression.
These panic attacks, etc., suddenly developed worse than he'd always had them. He used to have them at times of exams when he was sitting for exams, etc. But they got extremely bad, and he went to the doctor, and then from that went on to the psychiatrist.
I ended up going to my local doctor, and I walked in one day. I started boring my eyes out. So I guess you don't know what's up here. What's wrong with you? And then they ask you a series of questions, and then they referred me to a psychologist.
And find out that it even had a name. I didn't even know I had GAD. I didn't even know I had an anxiety disorder. I just thought I was having crazy thoughts and that they weren't normal. I knew they weren't normal, and just finding out that there were lots of other people out there that had the same thoughts as me, and it wasn't so unusual.
You've got to sort of look in yourself to say, there is something, I'm feeling like this, and you've got to ask yourself why, and to take yourself somewhere to be diagnosed. It is hard, of course, because you're scared to sort of go in and say, hey, I've got this and this, am I crazy, or what's going on?
I said, I get so stressed and I don't know what I've got to be stressed over, was basically it. And she said to me, well, you don't have to live like that, you know. There is something you can do about that. So that's when she referred me to a psychiatrist for assessment, and I've been seeing a psychologist for 2 years.
He suggested I take some medication which he prescribed to me, which works very quickly. He said you can only give you a certain amount because they're very addictive. And he prescribed them, and I would have an anxiety attack in the morning and I would take one. And to the point now where I had 2 last week for the first time in 4 months.
Well, I think really just getting my thoughts out was the best thing, and not feeling alone, because you do feel alone when you're having these thoughts and you can't share them with anybody, and you're constantly thinking that you're crazy, so you think you're alone.
So as you can see, each person had a very different experience with being diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. But each of them discussed the benefits of speaking to a professional and being able to actually identify what it is that they were struggling with. What I want you to hear is that you don't have to keep living with the anxiety being untreated, and that there are professionals out there who can help you learn to cope with anxiety. Here we're going to list the anxiety disorders that can be found in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which is a manual that professionals use to diagnose. Generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, panic disorder, specific phobias, where people are afraid of specific things, agoraphobia, which is the fear of leaving your home, and separation anxiety disorder. But for the purpose of this presentation, we will only be discussing the first 3. Now let's talk about the risk factors of anxiety disorders, things that put you at risk for developing anxiety disorders. The first thing we're going to discuss is genetics. We know that genetics plays a role in developing medical issues as well as mental health. Now, just because there may be a history of these mental health conditions in your family, it does not mean that you will develop anxiety disorder, but we do find that people who have an anxiety disorder may have had a history of these things in their families. Environmental factors include an exposure to harmful or dangerous environments, including childhood abuse, stressors with acquiring basic needs, and even some parental overprotection when you were a child. Developmentally, some children who exhibited shyness or difficulty in new situations later developed an anxiety disorder. And also people who exhibit neuroticism, which is people who are prone to be negative or in a constant negative emotional state. And biological factors include medical conditions such as asthma or heart problems, thyroid problems, the misuse of prescription drugs, and smoking and drinking alcohol as well. You don't have to have all of these factors present in your history, but we have found that it's typically a mixture of these factors that put you at risk of developing an anxiety disorder. I'm going to talk briefly about treatment options. One of the options for treating anxiety disorders is psychotherapy. This is where you're going to be meeting with a licensed mental health professional and being able to discuss goals and coping strategies so that way you can learn to overcome anxiety in your daily life. Now, the medical option is medication. This is where you would go and see a psychiatrist who is licensed to prescribe medication, and you have a conversation with the psychiatrist about whether you would be a candidate for medication services. And then there's the combination of both psychotherapy and medication. It's always important to have a therapist. A lot of people are worried about taking medication and becoming dependent on it. And this is a way that you can make sure that you're not solely dependent on medication. Now, there are some situations where medication is highly necessary, especially when we think about a genetic factor, a biological factor that may need the assistance of medication. And this is where it's of utmost importance to talk to a licensed professional to be able to be assessed, properly assessed, to determine whether or not you are a candidate for medication. In all of this, I want you to hear one of the most important things is that when we talk about treatment options, it should be a conversation between you and your either your general practitioner or your therapist about what the best treatment option is for you. So let's talk generalized anxiety disorder and the DSM. Remember, the DSM is a manual that we use, mental health professionals use to diagnose. And this is the criteria that's listed under generalized anxiety disorder. The first is excessive anxiety and worry, apprehension, expectation, occurring more days than not. So being worried or expecting to be worried, occurring more days than not for at least 6 months, about a number of events or activities, such as work or school performance. And the individual finds it difficult to control the worry. And the anxiety and worry are associated with at least 3 of the following: restlessness, feeling keyed up on edge, being easily fatigued, difficulty concentrating or mind going blank, irritability, muscle tension, and sleep disturbances, difficulty either falling asleep or staying asleep, or restlessness, unsatisfying sleep. So all of these are the criteria that you would need to be experiencing in order to be diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, which you also hear it being referred to as GAD, G-A-D, GAD for short. So this is straight out of the DSM. And again, a mental health professional will be skilled in being able to identify whether you are living with a generalized anxiety disorder. So let's talk coping with anxiety. Today, in between each diagnosis, I'm going to highlight some coping strategies that you can be using on your own. But first, let's talk in general about coping with anxiety. Some coping strategies that you already probably have heard or may be familiar with is deep breathing exercises. Another important coping strategy with anxiety is to call it what it is. It's meaning like if you're having an anxiety attack or a panic attack, sometimes you're not really sure what's going on with your body, but as you learn and you grow to understand what's happening, it's important to call out what it is, like saying, this is anxiety, this is a panic attack. This helps to take back power and control and reminds you that it is temporary. You can find a focus object, something in plain sight, and describe everything you can about it, all the facts, the colors, the textures, what it says, maybe it has words on it. Just describe everything you can. This helps distract your mind from the maybe the negative statements that you're telling yourself or the constant worry about what might be going on. And it helps you just bring a focus to only one thing. The next one is muscle relaxation techniques. These help take back control of your physical reactions, which we've discussed earlier in the presentation. All those physical reactions, the shakes, your heart racing, feeling out of breath, the tension, however you might experience your anxiety. These muscle relaxation techniques can help you get back control of your body. Next is visual relaxation. This helps you think about a safe place, really. It helps you feel comfortable or try to decrease the tension that's rising in you, and helps kind of shorten the effects of whatever you're being triggered by in the moment. So once you get really good at visual relaxation, you can kind of go to your own safe spot no matter where you're at. Another coping tool would be developing a mantra, a short positive phrase that you can repeat to yourself. We're so very good at saying all the negative statements to ourselves that developing these short phrases, just so that way you can basically put on repeat to block out all those negative statements that keep anxiety going. And another coping strategy for anxiety is good eating and sleep habits. If we're not eating well and we're not sleeping well, that can lead to increased anxiety symptoms. And remember that with anxiety, we have a lot of physiological responses. And so the fatigue and the jitters of not eating well might mimic our anxiety, which triggers our mind to think that we're having an anxiety attack, when possibly all it was is that we didn't eat well or we didn't have a good night's rest. And then get moving. Again, with anxiety, it's important to have exercise, to walk and be healthy, so that way we can learn to cope with the physiological responses as well as the mental, emotional responses that anxiety puts on our bodies. I'm going to highlight one of the coping strategies, which is breathing. You saw the first thing was deep breathing. There's a lot of different types of breathing techniques. Breathing techniques are essential to coping with anxiety disorders. If you struggle with anxiety, you know that it impacts the way you breathe. And in other situations, which we'll cover a little bit later, is the panic attacks. We're very familiar with some people who experience panic attacks are hyperventilating. They can't catch their breath. You can't catch your breath. And so it's important to learn a breathing strategy. It's like the foundation of coping with anxiety. I just want to highlight there are an abundance of breathing exercises available. It doesn't matter which breathing activity you choose, but it's important that you do choose one and do it. So right now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be practicing a breathing technique. This is called bubble breathing. It is a guided breathing exercise. And so with this breathing exercise, you're going to see the flower shape expand and contract. So get bigger and get smaller. And as it gets bigger, you're supposed to breathe in through your nose and then out through your mouth. So you breathe in for as long as it gets big, and then I'll tell you to breathe out when it gets smaller. And I'm going to go ahead and take myself off of the screen so that way you can just practice this without being distracted by me at all. So you can see that in this breathing exercise, it really tries to time your breathing. Now, what also is really beneficial about having a guided breathing activity like this, here's your focal point as well. So you can find breathing exercises online by typing in breathing exercises for anxiety. You can go on Pinterest. A little bit later, I'm going to be talking about apps that you could use in order to help yourself find a breathing technique that you enjoy. Now let's talk social anxiety disorder. Social anxiety disorder may be diagnosed when the fear, anxiety, or avoidance causes significant distress and impairment in functioning. The following must be experienced for 6 months or more. Fear or anxiety about one or more social situations in which the individual is exposed to possible scrutiny by others, like having a conversation, meeting unfamiliar people, being observed, and performing in front of others. Fearful or acting in a way or show anxiety symptoms that will be negatively evaluated. So basically, a person is being fearful of being embarrassed or humiliated. And so they're worried about showing those symptoms in social situations. So social situations almost always provoke fear or anxiety. Social situations are avoided, or if a person does go into a social situation, they experience intense fear and anxiety. The fear or anxiety is out of proportion to the actual threat posed by the social situation. So this is what it would look like if a person experienced a social anxiety disorder. Now here's another coping strategy, is self-talk. Our words are powerful. What we tell ourselves in the moment of feeling anxiety is critical to how we cope. Anxiety is like a big bully in our minds, but you can face this bully. Self-talk can fuel or extinguish anxiety. So fueling thoughts sound like, I'm going to have a heart attack. Everyone is going to know how I'm feeling. People are going to just stare at me. No one is going to want to talk to me. I just know I am going to fail. I always do. So it's important to be able to come up with some positive self-talk phrases like we mentioned before. Here are some examples of what positive self-talk can sound like when you're dealing with anxiety. Anxiety is not dangerous, it is just uncomfortable. I have felt like this before and I got through it just fine. I can control my breathing. I can be anxious and still deal with the situation. It's okay to slow down and breathe through this. It's okay to excuse myself, to gather myself and take deep breaths. I don't need these thoughts. I can choose to think differently. I am strong and capable. Now, I want to highlight that again, that none of these thoughts really deny that you're feeling anxious. It just starts to shift your self-talk into believing that you can control the situation. Because oftentimes when we're dealing with anxiety, we just feel out of control and we can't do anything to help ourselves through the situation. And again, like other coping strategies, you can do a quick search online to find other positive self-talk phrases for coping with anxiety. Now, the final anxiety disorder that we will be discussing today is panic disorder. Panic disorder is the recurrent unexpected panic attacks. A panic attack is an abrupt surge of intense fear or intense discomfort that reaches a peak within minutes, and during which time 4 or more of the symptoms below occur. When you have panic disorder, you fear or worry about a panic attack occurring again, and or change your behavior to avoid having a panic attack. And this occurs for at least 1 month. So here are some of the symptoms that you could be experiencing with panic disorder. Palpitations, your heart pounding, heart racing. People may even begin to sweat, trembling, shaking, sensations of shortness of breath or smothering, feeling like you can't breathe, feeling like you're choking, chest pain or discomfort, nausea, abdominal distress, feeling dizzy, unsteady, lightheaded, or faint, derealization, you're out of touch with reality, you fear losing control. Sometimes people describe it as they feel like they're going crazy. You have this fear that I'm going to die or that you are dying, numbness or tingling sensations. Some people feel chills or other people feel like they're getting really hot. So you can see that all of these different symptoms you can experience. And people have all of them or people have a few of them. Again, you have to have at least 4 or more to be able to be diagnosed with panic disorder. People with panic disorder oftentimes will find themselves going to the ER because they want to make sure they're not having a heart attack. It's important that you seek medical treatment, regardless, unless you're really working with a professional and they've already helped you identify the difference between a panic attack and a heart attack. And realize that if you are experiencing these and you're avoiding doing certain things, maybe you're avoiding going out of your house, or maybe you're avoiding going to a particular class or completing a particular project, because you don't want to feel like this, then you probably might be looking at living with a panic disorder. So one of the last coping strategies that I'm just going to briefly discuss is muscle relaxation. And especially after discussing panic disorder. And I've said over and over in this presentation that anxiety is a very physical experience. So muscle relaxation techniques can be highly effective in learning to manage the physical symptoms of anxiety. And what's important to recognize is that practice makes effective. Now, I always tell the clients that I work with that it's important to practice when you're not having a panic attack or you're not experiencing anxiety, because that way you can learn to master the technique. So that way, when you are facing anxiety, you can naturally be able to call on these relaxation techniques. This is a progressive muscle relaxation guided exercise. If you've ever had an anxiety episode, or if you live with anxiety, you know your muscles tend to feel tense. And so, what we do with progressive muscle relaxation is we overemphasize tightening the muscles so that way we can control them releasing. What that really looks like is you're just going to go through your body, tightening different parts of your body, and then after a few moments, relaxing them. So, as you said, it starts with your right hand, you tighten it in your forearm. And so you're going to tighten the like a fist, and then you're going to relax it. And you go through your body, your arms, your legs, your face, your feet, your shoulders, your stomach. Now, there are some really important things to highlight here is that you don't ever want to tighten so much that you're causing your body physical pain. If you have any injuries, it's really important to talk to your doctor about what types of stretches and muscle relaxations are safe for you so you don't injure yourself again. There are many different types of muscle relaxations, but all of them have the same general theme of breathing and controlling your muscles so that way you can, again, gain back that physical control. At Mount SAC, you have access to professional resources in the student health services where you can seek personal counseling services from a licensed therapist. Mount SAC student health services are located in 9E and 67B. COVID-19 response is that they are providing telehealth services, which is services by phone or by video conferencing using a secure platform, Zoom. And mental health services are provided on a short-term basis, where you work with a licensed mental health professional to develop attainable goals to improve your daily functioning, and especially your functioning as a student at Mount SAC. If longer-term care is needed, referrals will be provided, and your therapist will help you navigate the process of how to link towards a long-term therapist. Something to also note is that medication services are not offered at Mount SAC, and so you will be referred out if you are looking for medication treatment for a mental health condition. To access these services, you can call to make your appointment Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. There are many campus resources available to you, including the health education through the Health Center, where you can find self-help videos developed by the professionals working in the Health Center. You can check out monthly virtual events lined up for the semester, and all of these are free. There's also, through the Health Center, the mindfulness and meditation. You can sign up for a 30-minute session that can help you create a space to connect, learn, and develop self-care practices that can be done at home. You can find podcasts and information about mindfulness and meditation, again, free. And those can be found at mountsac.edu/health center. Another resource through Mount SAC is the Wellness Center. The Live Well Mount SAC has great content online available to you. You can check out their tabs, Mind and Body, Nutrition and Cooking, Go click around and find some free resources for exercise, eating, and even some parenting resource. Again, free. So the website is there located below as well. And again, all free through Mount SAC. You can access them online. Now, here are some anxiety resources that you can access at home as well. And again, just to note that we're not endorsing any of these, and some of them do have some fees associated with them. But depending on where you're at and wanting to pursue more information on your own about coping with anxiety, you can just check these out. One of them is the Anxiety and Phobia Workbook. You can purchase this online through a variety of sources if you just search the Anxiety and Phobia Workbook. Another resource is the Center for Clinical Interventions. And under their Looking After Yourself tab, they have many free self-help workbooks on anxiety, panic disorder, social anxiety, and more. And the website is listed there. Another resource is the National Institute of Mental Health. They have quite a bit of information to educate yourself. They have links to other resources about anxiety disorder. So that's a really reliable source there. I know that sometimes when you start to try to research on your own, it gets overwhelming to try to search through everything or to determine what's a good, reliable resource. So these are some that are reliable. I'm sure you have heard of Insight Timer and Headspace. Both are mobile apps. Insight Timer, you can subscribe for free. You can access it through your mobile phone or through the computer. And they offer guided exercises to improve sleep, anxiety, and stress. Now, there are some features in there like where it requires you to pay a subscription, but you don't have to pay. There are other free resources, many free resources through Insight Timer. Now, Headspace, they offer a 2-week, right now they're offering a 2-week trial, and then it starts to change into a monthly or yearly subscription. And again, it is just it's a mobile app or computer app, and they offer mindfulness and meditation exercises. And you can think of these apps as like just a bunch of libraries of different people who produce relaxation or anxiety or stress management, sleep management techniques, and they upload them so you have access to them. So you get to kind of pick and choose which ones you like, which ones you don't like. And so there's just a variety of options for you to choose from. Another resource for you would be podcasts. There are podcasts online, a lot of free podcasts. And actually, if you just put in your search bar podcasts for anxiety, you'll get some hits and it'll direct you to how to listen to those podcasts. Just some more anxiety resources for you to research and have access to at home. So that way you can explore more on your own. Here are some emergency resources for you. These can be used in the event that you're having thoughts of suicide, you're contemplating taking your own life. And so you might be familiar with the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is located in the middle there, where it's totally confidential. It's free to call, available 24/7, and you speak to a trained professional. But some people don't realize there's also a text line. And you can text Courage to 741-741. And again, it's 24/7 crisis text line, and you do chat with a licensed mental health provider to receive support via text message. And then lastly, if you are experiencing a medical or life-threatening emergency, you can always call 911 and you'll get your local emergency response team. So I want to thank you for spending this time with me and learning more about anxiety. And I hope that you found this information helpful and inspiring to maybe reach out and consider building some skills if any of the information applied to you, and to understand that you don't have to continue to live life where your functioning is being impaired by any of these feelings, and that there is hope and strategies to help you learn to live with and cope and overcome anxiety. So, a couple of quotes to end today. Worrying doesn't empty tomorrow of its sorrows, it empties today of its strengths. And smile, breathe, and go slowly. Again, thank you for joining us. Then I hope that you come back and check out our Let's Talk series, as well as explore any of the other self-help videos available to you, or even get in contact with the mental health team at Mount SAC Student Health Services. Have a great day.